All right, today I'm going to be walking you guys through this LS MT122 or the LS MT125. They're almost identical. I'm going to be walking you through the pre-startup and pre-work day inspection that I like to do. The first thing I like to do is make sure all the tires have air in them. The front tires have over 20 pounds or about 20 pounds in them. 22 is where they're supposed to be. In the rears, I make sure there's no leaks or anything going on crazy with them. Then I like to move on and check the front axle oil. First thing I like to do, I'm a little excessive. Still got some in there. It's looking good. Good quality. I wipe it. I do a little dip check to make sure there's nothing crazy. Nope, it looks very good. So the next thing I do while I'm over on this side is check the engine oil, which is right above it. We're going to unscrew this back on. And we're going to move up here. Then I pull the engine oil. I like to see, looks like it's in good condition. Starting to black. This oil change has about 25 hours on it. I like to change my oil every 50 hours. Looks pretty good. It's up to the appropriate level, as you guys can tell. It's in between there. I'm sorry the camera's in and out of focus so hard, but as you can tell, the oil's in good light. And you want to keep it right below here and in between there. I like to be up and toward the upper echelon, but right in the middle is fine. So then when I move from there, I check all the points and make sure everything has grease on it. Everything has grease. I'm only running the front loader right now, so I'm making sure everything is greased, and I just actually greased this, so I am sure that all 4 of the points down here have grease, and as you can hear, they are greased up pretty well. You can hear it. Okay, so all 4 points on each side are greased down here. The 1, 2, 3, and 4 back there are all greased, so all 8 points on each side are greased. I like to walk around, make sure I'm walking around, and I also make sure that 4-wheel drive and 2-wheel drive is moving when it's on level ground. It'll go in and out of high-low, no problem. The brakes I also check to make sure it's the brakes are working once I start it up. And then I make sure there's no extra slack in these pedals, because sometimes the pin does fall down. And I make sure it doesn't creep forward or back once it's started. That's one thing to check once it idle start. And then back here is your hydrostatic. And this is real good and extra clean, and you want to keep it between these 2 marks. Perfect. And then I also like to check near this hydrostatic filter, make sure there's no dampness. There's also one underneath. I like to take a peek at. I also like to look at, make sure no lug nuts are visibly loose or anything. I do go around and torque them every other use to make sure nothing's loose. I check this filter to make sure there's no dampness or anything on there, and there's not. You just make sure there's nothing leaking, and I check underneath to make sure there's nothing hanging. I also like to show this pin. This is one point to check. I actually put a washer, not a washer, a hose clamp over this, and this is a good fix to keep that pin in spot. It does end up working itself out slowly, but ever since I put that on there, I've had nothing but perfect issues, or perfect time with it, no issues. So I just like to give this a little shake, make sure there's nothing loose or jimmying, and I just look at the 4-wheel drive shaft, make sure that's all good. Everything looks all together and good. So to me, I'd be ready to start this thing up. And when I start this tractor up, I always like to make sure all the weight's off this. I give it a little shake, make sure nothing's broken. And then I hold this for about 5 seconds backwards for the glow plugs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then I bump the throttle up just a hair, and then I give it a crank. And I work the throttle down. She's around 1400, then I let her down to idle. You can tell no smoke, starts up glorious every time. It even attracts my son. He absolutely loves this tractor. You like the tractor, buddy? So he gives me, helps me with my PMCSs, and he gives me a hand checking it out. So I hope this helps you guys. Other things to check, just in case you are a little paranoid like me and you're gonna have a long hot day, another thing would just be to smart to pop the hood, check the air cleaner. And this one's it's decent, but it could use a little spray out and clean. I'll probably do that later today. Just make sure the air cleaner is nice and good. Also check all your hoses in here. Make sure there's no leaking in coolant. Check your coolant reservoir tank. Make sure there is some coolant in there. And this should get you just about through what you need to really check it out, especially if you're going onto a job site. You don't want to be embarrassed breaking down. Oh, and then we're just putting on this air cleaner. Oh, a little bit of a pain sometimes. All right, and that's pretty much all you have to do. I always check coolant, oil, hydrostatic oil, grease fittings, tires and rims, make sure they're on there good. And if you do that, most of the time you're going to stop yourself from breaking down. It's always worth checking over and changing your oil or whatever you have to do if there's anything you're questioning, because it's way easier to break down in your driveway or near where you can work on it, or just not in the middle of a field. It's never fun breaking down in the middle of a field. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. Hope this once over kind of gave you a heads up. If you're trying to find things or if you're new to the equipment, it kind of gives you a heads up what to look for, how to check it over, make sure nothing's leaking.